Sure. I guess virtually, of course, but then in person at the field trip.
Okay, ready to get started. A lot more people on Zoom tonight. I think it's because of the weather in part, or Michael's not here. He's finished his work at the state legislature and gone back home to the weather. Welcome, everybody. I hope you had a good holiday weekend before. Seems like it's been a long time since we were together. And guess what? It's going to be a long time again because next week is the university spring break. So there's going to be class again next week. So we are meeting today, and then it's 2 weeks from today that we meet subsequently, which is, what day is that? 13th or 14th, 13th, whatever that is, 2 weeks from tonight. That's when we're getting together. I'll email you, of course. I always do that to a fall. So tonight, as usual, we start with the presentation from one of our guests, one of our presenters. Tonight, it's all focused on cities and city transportation. And many of you know Julianne Sabula, who's our presenter, and I'll introduce her in a second. We will go, our normal is to go until 7. And we'd like, to your choice on how you want to handle discussion and Q&A. People do have lots of questions. You want to ask you things.
Yeah, I like Q&A a lot better than just me talking.
Okay. Great. It's always a pleasure to introduce Julianne. Julianne is, she was a student in class that I taught when I was my first semester here at the college. And so she always kind of, I don't know, roots me, ties me down. It's kind of like, yeah, this is, and it also makes me feel like that's been a long time. Oh, sorry. Julianne was distinguished herself as a student in a lot of different ways, but one of the things that she did that just captivated me and still is really interesting to me is that she was a double major in anthropology and planning, and I've always thought, now that is an interesting combination of, how people express cultures and then how people express community and how those things kind of go together. And I always thought, cool idea. I wanted to go back and do a double major like that. Since she left here, it's just been, a few short months since she left here. And but she's been amazingly productive during that time, having been a planner at UTA and also for the city where she currently is, the Transportation Division. As you see from her title, she's strategic planning and program manager for Salt Lake City Transportation Division. And I don't know if you, right, if I call you the streetcar lady?
Yes.
Okay, I can call you that.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
so
what I'm tired to be.
when she was very tired, she worked on the streetcar project for the city, a streetcar project for the city, and so she was called the streetcar lady, and that was endearing.
Yeah. I quickly had it changed, but I won't go into that tonight.
Anyway, Julianne.
Thanks. It's really good to be here, and I'm sorry for arriving late. Transportation issue. You must all care about, or you would not be here. And it's a complicated thing to work on and really exciting and fun. And so at the municipal level, one of the things I just really like about it is that you really have a close tie with land use and housing and other things. I find that nexus really interesting. And I like the scale. It's when I was at UTA, it's a regional scale, several counties, and it's a little bit different perspective. And so I think you've already had, was Andrea here yet?
No, she comes in another couple of weeks.
She comes later, but Laura was.
Yes, Laura started.
So you may already know that at the state level, there are several roadways as part of our network. And then it's integrated with a bunch of city stuff. Most members of the public don't necessarily know that. And so it can be very confusing for the public just to figure out who's in charge of what within the transportation system. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit how it works at the city level, how people who are just members of the community can be involved and a little bit of how we do our planning. So hopefully I have all my slides. I had several technical issues today. And if I don't, I'll make it work. Oh, can you go? Yeah, just, nope, you were right, the map.
Oh, it's a little touchy, hold on.
It has all your slides all at once.
All at once.
Okay.
Take it in quick.
So this one or the next one after this?
The map.
Now what's that?
Yep, this is just so that you understand the geographic boundaries that I'm talking about. Not everyone knows. I found this out when we started our Hive Paths at the Discount Transit Pass program, and people would come in from the West Valley, Magna, all over the place, thinking that they live in Salt Lake City. So these are the boundaries that I'm talking about, and largely we do a little work out here in the industrial west side, but almost everyone lives east of 215, and so that's primarily where I do my work. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this, I don't know if you can see it very well. It's a little braided here, but this is just a photograph of 300 South. This is actually right in front of where I live. And in a workshop exercise, we went through and identified, it was a multi-stakeholder group, identified who governs what within the city. And so what you're seeing is sticky notes that kind of tell who within the city is in charge of what, and you can see it's a lot of things. So just as an example, public utilities governs street lighting, and obviously all of the different utilities that run under the street, like sewer, water. Really important and really influences what we can and can't do. And then you'll also see things like compliance. They do parking, totally different department than I'm in. They used to be all together. A long story that I won't share right now. Then you can see along the sidewalk, you'll see historic preservation planning, some of the usual suspects, but real estate services is something that you may not necessarily think about. And many within the city lease out space for things like sidewalk dining. So all kinds of different people governing that right of way. Urban forestry, again, a whole separate group, deals with street trees, but as you all know, if you walked along the street, they're really important piece of transportation infrastructure. So a lot of coordination has to happen is what I'm communicating here. And in the transportation division, we respond to most inquiries from the community, but in many cases, more often than not, we don't control the things that they're calling us about. So it's an interesting dynamic for us, but it means I get to know a lot of people. Okay. Hopefully it just will work for you. That would be good. Oops. I think there's one back, but we can also go out of order. Go back to it later.
It's a fun game.
It is. Kidding.
Name that slide. And maybe I'll just introduce it while we're looking for it. But what I'm going to talk about, because of the confusion with all of the different folks that touch the transportation system, it can be hard to know how to be involved. And in fact, in updating this presentation from last year, one of the things I noticed is that a lot of things I was going to include because they were programs that I think might still exist. I just can't find on our own website, which is really telling. So I'm going to talk about the ways that I think are the most important, and then I can mention a couple programs that we also have. So what this slide is showing you is, you can influence kind of the planning and the outcomes, and then there's some of the on the ground real life stuff. So in terms of influencing the process, it can be a pretty broad range, meaning just going to our website. It's just slc.gov/transportation. And all of our projects are listed there. Again, you have to look around. The onus ends up being on you. We're trying to fix it to figure out where's the planning projects and where's the construction projects. But in general, you can find project information. When a project is active, we tend to update really regularly. And when it's not, we don't, just from a resources standpoint. But that's a place where you can, click to be involved. You can get on a city listserv for everything, so you hear about every project that's happening. But that's sort of like a hands-off, then you can do a survey if you want to do a survey, attend an event if you want to do Attending city council meetings can be helpful, but primarily the formal meetings are when council members hear comments. And my suggestion to people who really want to influence decision-making is to watch or attend their work session. They happen at a time of day that many people are at work. So, it's kind of in that 2 to 7 p.m. timeframe every Tuesday. But during that time, a lot of the meat of things get really discussed. In the formal meeting, often they've already thought through their decisions. And so I think it's just, you have less room for affecting the process. And the earlier in the process that you get involved, so more at the planning level, the more influence you'll have at the ultimate outcome. Once it's constructed, it's going to take us a while to respond if in fact we even can change something that's been built. We have, actually, I know we have at least one advocate in this room. And one of the things I will say about Salt Lake City is that we have a pretty small advocacy community, but advocates are really helpful to staff. And why I say this is because they can say things that staff can't. In a political environment, sometimes that really is helpful. We need other people to tell our decision makers what they want. And ultimately, often we want the same thing, and there are obstacles to doing that. And so it helps to hear from community members and especially from advocates. And so I always encourage people, if you want to help grow that advocate community here, it's a great thing to do because we need that. And then we have several different boards. So we have Transportation Advisory Board, we have the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and then the CDCIP Board. And really the roles of those are all citizen advisory committees. You have to fill out an application, and then there's a process by which people are vetted internally. And the mayor's office, ultimately makes a recommendation, and then that person gets approved by our city council. So if that's something you have an interest in, you can look at boards and commissions on our website, call me on the phone or email me, and I can give you more information. But essentially, Transportation Advisory Board is just what it sounds like, citywide transportation. We have representatives throughout the city, and they advise as to what they think their part of the community is interested in seeing, and what sorts of needs there are in particular. And then BAC, Bicycle Advisory Committee, same thing, but really focused on bicycling in the city. Partly because that infrastructure is mostly what we're doing now is walking and biking infrastructure, some transit infrastructure. The only place we're building roads really is way out west in the industrial part of the city. And, there's no political will to widen roads, right? We've knocked down businesses and homes, and that's not something that that fits in with the vision of the city as articulated in our master plans. And by our elected officials. So those are the things in terms of influencing the process. If there's a project in your neighborhood or that you're just really interested in, I highly recommend getting involved early. And every time there's an opportunity, and we're trying more and more to make that easy. I will say it's super hard to reach people. And so we send postcards and we put things on our website, and we, all of that. And we have a pretty small staff, but I feel like we really try and punch above our weight in terms of getting the word out, and it's challenging. So it's nice if you have an interest in transportation and you know other people that do, to encourage them to watch for this stuff too, because it is hard for us to reach people. And then over on the ground action side, there's a couple different things. There's some of the basics, just you encounter a pothole, or there's a sign that got written into it, that sort of thing. You can report those issues on SLC Mobile, which is an app. You can do it on your computer as well, but you can also download an app onto your phone. You can take a picture of what it is. It's pretty easy. And the response times it tends to make a difference what the issue is and how busy that work group is during that time of year. So if it's a time of year that our streets crew is out there doing surface treatments on all our roads, it's going to take them a little longer to respond. But otherwise, I've seen a pothole get taken care of in 2 days. So they can, you know, it can be something that where people are really responsive and will usually find the right agency for you if it's not us, or if it's a UTA issue.
Is that a good place for snow moving? The requirement, the code requirement for shoveling sidewalks 24 hours after a snow event.
It is indeed, because we have in the city 2 inspectors for the whole city. And so, and they do everything. They do building inspections for certificates of occupancy. So a new apartment building can open. They do inspections for stuff like that. So it's a whole range of things. And so unless you tell them, they're probably not going to have these issues on their own. And we have had, I would say, more complaints, even last year, less snow. This year it would make sense because we've had a lot of snow, but we've had a lot of complaints. There's tons of construction in the city. And so you may notice that we have those temporary sidewalks, and then the bike lane is blocked off. There's snow everywhere. So it's, you know, it can be really challenging in the winter time for people to get around unless they're in a car. And we are working on some policy changes that I'm hoping help improve those things. Anyhow, yeah, if you want to report snow, that's a good place to do it. And in particular, we noticed that developers that have kind of vacant property, that tends to be a place we have a big, long stretch shovel because they're just not there and don't realize. So it's good. And we give them a little time to do it before we sign them. So anyway, so that. The other thing that you can do is a lot more direct, and that is to submit a constituent CIP application. CIP refers to our capital improvement program. And so you see over here, the CIP board is the constituent advisory board. And all that means is all of the stuff that we are going to use funding to build within the city. We have a process where that's open to our constituents. And so if you want signage or speed bumps or, you know, a bus stop pad in your neighborhood, these are things you can apply for. I think the maximum you can apply for is 500,000. And that doesn't go very far. It sounds like a ton of money, but it's not as much as you'd think. So often it's like smaller things, but what you can do is start the application process, and then a staff member will work with you to help figure out costs and what that looks like to submit an application that isn't totally out of whack. So in any case, that's another way that you can get involved.
Just for reference, what would 500,000 get you, like a project idea?
Well, we have a project right now in the West Capitol Hill of Marmalade area. And they got, actually, I think a little more than, it's funny because there's a maximum, but a city council, they get to decide what to do with the money. And so they decided to give a little more. And that was a couple different, some signage, some crosswalk improvements. It was actually kind of a lot, you know, as these projects go, but it's not so, for, as another example, we have 250,000 in West Sugar House, and that essentially can get us a few. So it's, yeah, it's, and you know, there's design costs, there's some things that get all rolled into that, but that's, and those prices have been skyrocketing, I will say, between supply chain and labor issues, it's just gotten very expensive to build things. So we have all kinds of new federal transportation money that's allowing us to spend more on projects, but not necessarily build more of them. So in any case, but it's a neat process, and people who are into that sort of thing really like getting involved because then you get to sort of see the whole thing transform your street.
Before you leave that,
Yeah.
is there a cycle or a schedule for CIP projects?
Yeah, so there's a meeting happening right now
Oh,
that I got out of by getting to be here with all of you.
we have like 4 projects that we'd like to present right now.
Bring it on, bring it on. Yeah, actually, so the window is closed for applications for this year, but it will open probably, I'm trying to think because the constituent ones are different than the internal. We also have to apply as city staff for our department's projects. So it's an interesting sort of process. But anyway, it's not going to open back up for a while, but there's information on our website about what the timing is. It is currently out of date because that changed right now. So wait, and they'll tell you when it's coming again. But I think it comes in the summer, like after the regular budget is done, at the end of June. So,
I would think if a citizen had a really good project, that it might be picked up by the department.
well, that is a really interesting thing. We have been able to, take projects from the community that dovetail with our project. If it's already something that we want to do, then we sell it that way, to the CGCIP board and ultimately city council. Because, hey, if we're all on the same page, you know, and from a technical standpoint, there's a high need here. I will say we prioritize projects in a weird way, or what may seem weird to all of you, in that we do a geospatial exercise that looks at demographics and looks at things like pavement condition, all those kinds of things. People with disabilities within the city. And we select projects based on things like equity, sustainability, good governance, which just means if public utilities is going to tear up the street, you don't want to tear up the same one next year. So, you know, how do we make those projects happen together? And so if your project isn't one of ours, it doesn't mean it's a bad project. It just means that we rank them using some metrics that are a little different.
So how would someone figure out what those metrics are? I mean, you kind of, if you're wanting to advocate for a project, you can kind of intuit that safety is going to be an important factor. because
Absolutely, yeah.
People respond to safety concerns. And so a lot of the projects that the students are working on right now do relate to some level of safety, sometimes directly. But those other things that you talked about, sustainability and equity, when you say equity, do you mean kind of geographic equity or equity between affinity groups, or?
It really is a question. It's a lot of demographic data. So we look at low income households. We look at zero car households. We look at diversity. We look at age, disabilities, I already mentioned, but where there's a lot of children and a lot of older people, there's more need. Did you have something?
Yeah, kind of. So you're talking about zero car households, but there are some communities that have several cars per household. You also calculate car per person in certain areas, and would that be a useful metric?
Yes and no. Because it tends to correspond with either poverty or wealth. And it's hard to just, I mean, I can distill just by looking at it, right? We can make good guesses that if it's the East Bench, it's one, and if it's, you know, the west side of the city or parts of the downtown area, that it might be another. But it that's a tricky metric because, for instance, a lot of essential workers, the only way to get to work is to drive, or if you have to live way out in the hinterlands because that's where housing is affordable, you know. And so the need for a car, I mean, ultimately, if we approve all of the other options, hopefully we reduce that need. But we don't use that specific metric. Does that answer what you were asking?
Sort of.
Okay, you can ask for clarification if you want
No, I
clarification.
mean, I live in Kearns, and a lot of properties have multiple vehicles, but you know, that doesn't mean that they're all being utilized.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, a lot of times it's, you know, some folks are, you know, scrapping, and you know, some folks are, you know, switching from car to car, but there's some houses that have a larger family, multi-generational families living there, but they're not a zero car household, but they're a high public transit use group.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so, you know, we don't consider that in the metrics, like I said, because it's a little bit fuzzy, but we do, most of the other metrics that we look at are good predictors of transit use. There's something called a transit propensity index, and that can kind of give, even if there's not, because if we just base things on ridership, do we need something that we, you know, because the transit ridership is really high? If you don't have a route, then there is no ridership. And so we use that propensity index to guess where there's latent demand. And we've been remarkably right. We've done a lot of service buy-ups, transit service buy-ups for east-west connectivity across the city, and found out that there was a ton of latent demand west of I-15. And, we had a suspicion about it, but, I think UTA was like, well, you guys risk your own money finding out. We don't want to fall on our faces. So we did. And it's really successful. Okay, so this is just a quick slide that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because it's a lot of words. And I think this will probably get sent out after so you can look it over. But this just kind of shows the different types of planning that we do within the Salt Lake City Transportation Division. And the thing that I really want to point out is, some of the questions that we consider, and I'm going to go through these quickly on specific projects. But importantly, you'll see that top of people is after every one of these. And it is a piece of each phase of a project that we do. And I say that because that means there's a lot of opportunities. They're not highly visible, but if you look, I promise you will find more transportation projects to give your input on than you probably have time for. Okay, next one. So clear goals, what are the goals is one of the first questions that I talked about. This is really important, and this is where community feedback to me is most helpful. So this kind of looks at, with that project, the different goals that they have, but they had to go out and talk to people in the community and get a sense of what are your hopes and dreams, what are the problems you encounter day in, day out. If you were building a facility, you could transfer from a bus to the train, to a scooter, etc. What would that facility ideally include? We try to avoid asking, do you want this option or this option? Some of my colleagues do it still, working on it. But I don't like asking that. It's like asking people, do you want a 12-inch water main or an 18-inch? I think it doesn't even make sense. You could say, I like how that one looks, but until you really know how it's going to function, it's hard to say. And there are a few people who can look at a drawing and understand what that's going to mean once you're out there walking or biking or driving, getting on the bus. So knowing what you want, what you envision, what you're trying to solve is a really good way to get in. And it's helpful, especially if you communicate with elected officials, because most of the technical, I want this, or why did you decide that, gets sent directly to me or one of my colleagues, in which case you might as well just call me. I mean, it's good to contact your elected officials. I don't want to discourage that, but a lot of those things are just going to come back to us to provide answers for, but those goals are really important and categorized into key themes that we share with the community. Next one. We also, in addition to all the public input I mentioned with our projects, we do a lot of data analysis. And so this is showing some of what I talked about earlier, the transit propensity index. You can also see this population and employment density. And basically where you see the green, that's where you have both jobs and homes. And so that helps us see, oh, there's a big mix of uses. Transit is way more successful in those places than going between where people live and people work. And there's only a few trips a day that are really significant. And then, transit propensity index, again, you can see the parts of the city where there's the greatest propensity to ride transit. And so this is just one example. We use a lot of different data. Data collection is really expensive, so we actually have a lot less data than people think we have. And one of the hardest types of data to get is bike and ped counts and patterns. There are people that use apps, for example, but that tends to capture a specific subset of the population, and so we're missing a lot in those. But in any case, we use the data that we have. Next one. The other thing that we think through are all the different alternatives. And so typically we'll start with kind of a universe of alternatives, we call it. And it's just everything you can think of to solve this problem, including just charging more for parking. And then as we start to whittle it down to the ones that are really feasible options, then we can think through what the trade-offs are. And every project has trade-offs. I have yet to do a project that didn't make somebody mad. And usually a lot of somebody is mad. And you know, if you get in a room with 3 people and you say, what do you want right there? Or what do you want for lunch? You know, getting absolute agreement is a pretty hard thing to do. And so going back to those goals and the problems we're trying to solve is a really helpful thing. And being able to communicate, there's going to be winners and losers. What are the trade-offs? We have been experiencing a lot of disruption in our industry, and I don't love this term because I feel like new exciting stuff, calling it disruption is a little bit, you know, yes, it's disrupting our world as we've known it, but it's also really fun and exciting because more options means more people have choices. And so for us, it's a question of not letting those new options take options away from other people. You know, scooters has been a really big thing. Several years ago, they just dropped in our city, and we had a policy sort of drafted for how we were going to deal with it, but then they just showed up, and suddenly I had the DUs on the phone with me saying, what are they doing out here? And so, for instance, a big issue that we've had is ensuring that they're not blocking the sidewalk, especially for people who use a mobility device. It's a real problem. And so, and just, you know, sort of training and the public getting used to a new thing, even just doing roundabouts, if people are not used to them, it takes a while, you know, for everybody to figure out what's going on. We are starting to think that with autonomous, I will say a word just briefly about autonomous vehicles. And that is that everyone has been convinced they're coming like any minute now. I don't think they're coming anytime soon. That is just like the Julianne taking the temperature on things, but I really don't. And I think if they did in Salt Lake City, I would want to be prepared with an option that says, we're saving that for buses, right? For autonomous vehicles that are high capacity. We'll dedicate lanes to that and preserve the safety of our bicyclists and pedestrians that are out there trying to use the right of way. That's supposed to be for people, right? And not ideally for especially empty vehicles that are just waiting to pick up. And we are actually really talking about, I think what could come sooner potentially is passenger drones, but they're in the air and those conflicts aren't there. And so we already have delivery drones in some places. There are prototypes that have been built of passenger drones. The state of Utah has a real interest in that, which is weird to me, but I guess people in extraction industry, kind of parts of the state that jobs are drying up, need to be able to get places.
For delivery of medical goods.
Medical and even, yeah, interventions. So if there's a freeway incident, a drone can get in there really quickly and easily without navigating all the traffic. So all of those things are kind of in play. I think in terms of actual passenger drones, that is also a long way off if it happens at all, because the cost is just not going to be within, unless we subsidize it just to death. And we might, you know, all transportation is subsidized, even walking. And so that might happen, but I think otherwise it's not going to be something that's huge. And I haven't been planning for intergalactic travel yet. We are doing a citywide transportation plan update.
So they've looked at this website before class.
Perfect. Oh, wonderful. Well, then I don't know that I'm going to say anything about it, because I really want to know if you have thoughts or questions that, while we're on this slide, that you want to share, ask. Oh,
Let's talk about east-west connections.
yeah, east-west connections. That's a really big part of my world right now. So we have been looking at the corridor that currently has all of the freight rail and I-15. And it historically has been a big dividing line in our city, where our infrastructure has actually corresponded with redlining, some things in our past that are pretty ugly. And it continues to be this obstacle for people. So if you live west of I-15, if you need to do anything east of I-15, your travel times are super unpredictable. You may need to own a car. If you're on a bike, you might have to go a mile or two out of your way if there's a train blocking where you normally cross. There's some real issues. So the transportation infrastructure really helps the regional folks that are going north south. But for people who live in our community, they really, I think it feels like we're two cities in many ways. And so we're looking to increase the permeability, break down barriers, We're doing a very high level look at that in this plan, just sort of a policy level, high level thing. But we applied for a grant that I hope we get, and we'll find out in the next month or so. That is really going to look at all the options. Can we bury the rails? Can we bury the freeway? Like big picture, transformative, generational kind of projects. To like the little stuff, right? How do we just improve the crossings? Can we do a ped bridge? Can we make this interchange a little friendlier to people who are walking and biking? So it'll be the whole range of things.
We have some projects that speak to this issue.
Yes.
Where there are several people in the room I know are very interested to know where's the on-ramp? Sorry for the, but you know, where's the cross? You know, we've got some ideas on how to make east-west connections better. Is there a place in the city where we can park those ideas?
Yes. I think actually the best place until later this week, when one of my staff members returns from paternity leave, is to send them to me. And I'll stay plugged in with this class throughout. So, you know, if you would like down the road to present them to us.
April 10 and 17. Just for example.
Just for example, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. It's stuff that we love to hear, and people will think of things that we don't think of.
And two of your council members here, so.
Oh, wonderful. Good. If they see it, that's even better. Yeah.
I have a question. It kind of relates to our project. Does the University of Utah ever like subsidize road things that involve roads that go through campus, like Mario Capaci? Like, will they ever like get the ability to subsidize it for you guys, or is that strictly?
That is a really complicated question.
And I think Mario Capecchi is UW.
Mario Capecchi, some of them are UDOT's, some of them are ours. It's one of the few instances where even when we're all in a room together, we don't know. Yeah. And to further complicate it, in places like Research Park, you know, you'll have like the center medians, for example. Those are considered open space, so they're actually named by our parks folks, rather than, I mean, it's city government is really messy. And that's one of the ways in which that's the case. But yeah, so we have been talking with the university quite a bit, in particular, working on a project called TechLink, where we're looking to increase the permeability between main campus and Research Park, especially if the kind of planning that they want to do in Research Park happens, much more density, much bigger mix of uses. We'll really need more than just Foothill and those couple of giant people, and hopefully for them to get around in a way that's more pleasant. Today it's not. So yeah.
Policy of the things, even integrating the new zero policy into them.
Yeah, in fact, I just got sort of a draft chapter from our consultants on that. They're looking at sort of, we also have a draft policy that was created by a colleague that has since gone to work for parks.
He was here.
Oh, was Tom here?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And if any of you take other classes up here, you can have classes with him. He's fantastic. And he drafted a policy that is perfect world. I think we'll see if we get there. But yeah, we will address that, Dave. Other questions? Anybody online?
How much of the work that you do is driven by other developments in the city? Sugar House, for example. Because that obviously, the 21st South expansion and making it more, how much of it is things that you master plan? And how much of it is stuff you're reacting to?
Both. The answer is both. So we knew we were going to see a lot of growth in Sugar House. And so when I started with the city about a decade ago, we thought we knew what that growth was going to look like, and even some of the players who was going to own what, that kind of thing. Those things shifted a little, but either way, we knew it was growing. And so some of our planning could just simply respond to growth. With our local link study, link is in a lot of things. I'm realizing it's gonna start confusing people. Our local lake study looked at Sugar House and just connectivity within the area as kind of a reassessment. We had done a plan in late 2017, and we needed to really update that to respond to what actually was happening. So it's a little bit of each. And right now downtown is bonkers. Sugar House continues to be bonkers with growth.
That's amazing. So 2017 plan is already out of date. You know, it's like, oh man, that is so like 5.5 years ago.
Right? It's crazy. It's crazy. And you know, it's not always like that, but it feels like it's been always like that. You get done with a plan and it's already out of date. You know, that's part of why this plan isn't really a laundry list of projects, but is a policy heavy document, because it's really how do we create our priorities? How do we create flexibility within our rights of way so that we can do a lot of different things with technology, roads, weather, growth. Maybe happening differently.
We have a question on Zoom, actually.
Yeah.
What is Salt Lake City doing to create bike and ped connections to trails, putting your bike on your car to go for a ride is the most efficient way?
Oh, totally. It's really embarrassing. I recently had to buy a bike thing. And, yeah, it feels weird to be transporting a mode of transportation. So we have been talking about with UTA about doing some transit. That's one of the things that we're really interested in.
We are too. We have a whole group of students working just on that issue.
I love this because we haven't really gotten very far with it. I think we have had a meeting so far. So we're here for new ideas.
And yeah, I saw several of them are on Zoom. So speak up, guys. Here's your chance. Someone's talking. No. Well, they will. You'll hear from them.
Okay, good. Good. I really want to, because this has been one of our trickiest. I would say that recreation is the trickiest thing, transportation wise. You know, in terms of going completely car free, for people, recreation's tough.
Well, you just look at the congestion and trailheads, and it's just so weird because, you know, you hear all these people who are driving these large vehicles to too few parking spaces so that they can go out and walk, you know, or
Yeah.
ride their bikes. And it's just like, wait, this is all kind of messed up.
It's really messed up, and like this, you know, the road, all
Oh, yeah.
people parked up and down, and and it makes it feel less like you're out in nature when you're like in a parking lot. So, yeah, that is an issue, and it's one that we're in the very early stages. You know, we've looked at increasing bicycle and pedestrian connectivity, but in terms of longer distances or distances that not everyone is comfortable doing just on their bike, but getting transit there.
You know, back to your project criteria comments earlier, this particular example makes me think of economic development. Salt Lake City has a brand that it projects internationally about being, you know, about the outdoors and access to nature and the Mighty Five and the whole bit. And I'm wondering, you know, does a project like this of reducing the need for a car to get to a trail turn into kind of an economic development opportunity for the city? And is that a criterion that the city would respond to?
I haven't thought about it, but I love the idea. I hadn't thought about it in that way, but that is huge. I think after skiing, biking is our second biggest draw for tourism. So it's big in terms of the economy, and it's not just out like in Red Rock country, you know.
No, just getting to the zoo so you can get on the shoreline trail. I mean,
Oh, the zoo.
just the zoo itself. I mean, that you don't have to go out of town, you know?
Yeah. I am trying to build a roundabout so the bus can serve the zoo. Hopefully that will happen. So yeah, economic development is something that I think we could consider. It is challenging because, how do I put that? It's sort of like sustainability or resilience. You know, you can make anything fit that if you want to, and sometimes you end up with these competing interests that cancel each other out. And so we'd have to be really thoughtful about what metrics we use to evaluate that. But that being said, you know, I mean, we are still in an ever-changing kind of thing with how we evaluate projects. There is a place on our website, by the way, where you can see how we do it now. And all of the projects that I think, most of the projects that are currently in our database, mostly drawn from that. So as that changes over time, as soon as we get through, we're doing a process right now that as soon as we're done, we're going to go back and look at the criteria and look at how we evaluate things and revamp it. So keep an eye out. For those of you that are real nerds, it's going to get interesting.
Well, we're coming on to break time.
Yeah.
And, I have a question for you, but I want you also to be able to kind of finish up where you want to finish up.
I think I have much more, but let's look.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, helpful links.
Helpful links.
There you go. How did I know this? We've been talking about throughout your presentation, I hope it hasn't been too annoying. We have a lot of students that are working kind of in your area. And so it would be wonderful, lovely, to have some opportunity for some interaction between those groups and if not you, people around you in the office or something.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'm hoping it would be beneficial to you as well as to us.
Yeah.
Can we say, I'm not asking for any particular commitments, but I'm thinking maybe we could, start creating some informal connections, because on the April 10 and 17, council members Morris and Bono will be here along with EPA Commissioner Christensen.
Okay.
And
It might be better if we're not responding totally off the cuff.
well, I thought maybe.
I love that. Council should fund.
But taking your very good point that sometimes it's helpful to have somebody from outside the staff advocating for a particular position or a particular project.
Yeah.
Thinking this is a way of taking some of the ideas that we're coming up with our groups here and making them as good as they can get, and also maybe kind of smoothing the path towards their incorporation into some sort of document. So there's some real opportunities here, I think, for everyone.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And if I know where they are and approximately what they are, we can just have you come visit us in transportation.
I'll have an email to you tomorrow.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, we have a lot of people now, which is really nice. We have a new livable streets program. That's kind of cool. And that's really focused on safety on neighborhood streets. So yeah, we now have enough people that I think I can commit their time without you.
I was remiss in not mentioning when I was introducing you that you are the current president of the Northern Utah chapter of WTS.
I think you might have mentioned, well, I'm outgoing.
You are outgoing. Yeah, that's why you're here. You're a very outgoing person. She's not shy at all. She's very outgoing.
But I will be officially the past president sometime this week. So
You thought maybe even tonight, it might be happening at this
it
moment.
might be happening at this very moment. So yeah, we have a great new president, Alexis Person, that is running uncontested. So if she doesn't win, I'll be really surprised and I'll feel really bad for her.
That goes right in campaign. But WTS, if you're not familiar with it, is it's now just WTS, but it used to stand for Women's Transportation Seminar. And it has as a mission the promotion of good transportation for all, by all, but it has a history in trying to create better equity and diversity in the transportation professions. And they are, to my eyes, the most effective transportation networking, professional networking organization in existence, better than APA, better than ITE. And very effective. And so if you're not familiar with WTS, type it into your Google and find out about it. It's not just for women, by the way, I'm a member.
They were so fun. We're so much more fun. If you've gone to anything with Lucy on WTS, it's really fun. And yeah, it's really good networking, but we also have some good educational programming, just like lunch and learn, kind of stuff.
And if you're a university student, they have scholarships.
Yes, we do.
Just launched yesterday.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm super excited, and we have an annual gala where we announce those scholarships, and it just every time. It's really exciting. The industry has been flat from about the early 70s until 3 years ago, 12% transportation industry. And you just can't plan in the same way unless it's part of your lived experience. And we have been really broadening our mission, I think, to be more inclusive, that it's not really about women, but it's a diversity of perspectives. So, yeah, call me if you have an interest or go to our website. And we're called, I think, Northern Utah chapter. We're going just vernacular Utah chapter because we thought at some point Southern Utah would do one. And
Keep claiming the whole state.
we're just claiming the state. Yep.
Go.
You go for it.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been excellent, excellent.
Thanks.
All right. So let's talk about the whole state. It's kind of abstract so often. And when the city comes, yeah, let's talk about this specific intersection. That's what people want to talk about too. I am really jazzed by, of course, what she presented, but also the various opportunities that we have with a number of our projects to, just advance it. So, and we're going to have opportunities for other projects, other places. For instance, in Kearns, we have Kearns in another couple of weeks. And so,
Yeah, Greater Salt Lake, right? Greater Salt Lake Municipal Services.
yes, that's right. And so there are other options, not just all Salt Lakes. So what you see, are you sharing that? Is that, people on Zoom are seeing this? So I have, once again, you're getting used to this now, every week, it's a new kind of formulation of the groups. But trying to adapt and be a little bit light on my feet. I'm trying to come up with formulations of groupings that make some sense according to what people's ideas are. And of course, people's ideas are evolving. So the projects that are on the screen, the red titles are the kind of group projects where everybody's working together on a single project. And then the column on the right with the black titles are the groups that are providing kind of peer-to-peer support, but they are with at least one exception. They are individual projects that are being pursued by people. And so I tried to put names of projects, brief because I didn't have a lot of space. But would you please take everyone Zoom to take a look at this and see if I got it right? And if there are a couple names there that don't have anything next to them, any project titles next to them. If you have a project and I just don't know about it, please let me know. Did I get anything like tragically wrong? Embarrassingly wrong? I mean, if it's just slightly wrong, I can live with that. Just send me an email. But if there's something that's just blatantly wrong, shout it out. Nobody? Okay. Well, then I'll assume that that's good. What I asked you to do for today, as you know, was to get to what will probably end up being the initial or beginning slides of your presentation. At least in draft form. I call them the exposition, because like in an expository essay, the exposition is the kind of who, what, when, where. It is setting the table, it's articulating what the issue is, what the hook is, meaning what the issue is identifying what are we talking about. The hook is what's the emotional connection to that topic? Why should we care? Why does it matter? Why would anyone want to spend time considering this? And so if, as a presenter, someone who's presenting an idea, you need to get people to care about what you care about. And you need to be able to articulate that like upfront. So this is the issue. This is why it's important. This is why I care about it. implicitly, this is why you should care about it too. And so I, in my prompts to you on email, I said that this is where the kind of the context and the history of the idea comes from, and what's at stake. Why is it an important issue? And so people sent in their slides, and we are going to take a look at it. And this is in the nature of what I would call kind of a workshop. So we're just going to kind of look at people's slides, and everybody should kind of chime in on what you think you see, what you like, what you opportunities that you see for improvement, in ways that we can all make it better. So I think the fastest way is here. Oh, while I'm here on the front page, I had to keep that photo. That photo was just so good. They just decided that had to stay up. I periodically put new news articles on the webpage. I try to do it at least once a week. And this was this morning's paper about new projects in Sugar House. And so if you haven't seen this, you might want to take a look at it. Sugar House has always been very interesting. I think it's getting even more interesting from a transportation perspective. And what the city's trying to do down there is, if not exactly right, certainly applaudable. Before I go to slides, though, I also want to point out something I mentioned in a couple of weeks ago, and that's office hours. So right here, I've done one office hour session with one student from WTA. As we get further on in the semester and your projects get further and further advanced in their kind of formulation, I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. So you just click on that link and it'll take you to a Google Sheet document that is open to everyone. And you just go down it's for the whole semester. So you just go down the list and you find the right day and the right time that works for you. And assuming that it's open, please don't bump anybody off schedule. That's cool. So just type your name in. That's all you do. You just type your name in. If you're going to attend by Zoom, it's helpful if you can indicate that in that column there. And the link for the Zoom, if you're going to do that, is right there. And so it's a really handy way for me to manage my appointments and an easy, accessible way for people to sign up. And since you can attend virtually through Zoom, it makes it easy to have a conversation about something. So please take advantage of it. This is what they pay me to do. It's part of my job. So, love to see you during office. Bless you. Okay, so the other things, this is all in the way of announcements. The class session videos, that's been up there for a while, and now starting to populate that page with PowerPoint slides too. I'm a little bit behind, but I'll get that caught up. So if somebody's made a presentation and there's a slide with some information that you want to remind yourself about, you should be able to find it there. And then there was some noise, positive noise, when I suggested maybe linking to the Portland class. So the Portland class, the class like this that happens in Portland happens in the fall. And so they've already wrapped for the year. And they have all of their class sessions on YouTube like we do, and including their project presentations. So in November, December, they had their final student project presentations, and those are all on YouTube. And so this is a link to those projects.
I think the students on Zoom are seeing that actually.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Wow. Okay, now I'll start all over again. No, I won't. Stop share. Start share. Now you're seeing it. Okay. Well, it was the Canvas page, right? Everyone's familiar with the Canvas. This page just that was Yeah, it was just a little embarrassing.
Thank Marissa, she saw me.
Okay. So Marissa, what I was talking about was the office hours, sign up right there. And now we're talking about the Portland, the link to the Portland class final projects right here. So if you're interested in what other students are doing in Portland, you might check that out. The resources page, this is something that Matt, I started it, but Matt has mainly populated it, but it's there for everyone. So this is a list of possible resources for you to take advantage of when you're working on your projects. And these are just things that we have found in our various journeys around the internet that we thought might be of interest or helpful to you in your projects. And you can see it's already a pretty long list. But if you find something that you want to, that you found very interesting and very helpful, please add it. And so you can add it by, if you look at the top of the page, it says edit, right under where it says I'm talking. Yes, I know I'm talking. Move. So if you push edit, and I've set it up so anybody can edit, you'll get this page. Scroll down to the bottom. Move this out of the way. And add, just add some more lines there, and then just add the title and the link. And when you're done, you go down to the bottom, it says save. And just click that and it'll save it. And so it's kind of a wiki resource. So if you've got things that you found that you think other people might make use of, please add it and we can all share it. Good. All right. So here are the slides that people submitted for tonight. Ah, cool. This is more populated than it was just a couple hours ago when I was looking. So I'm just taking them in the order that they're on the page. So this is the Sugar House Walkability Project.
Yes.
And Rebecca, are you on Zoom or are you with us tonight? No.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Anna, do you want to talk about this a little bit and narrate what you come up with?
Yeah, the graphic design is not where I want it to be for an end result, but basically trying to paint a picture of there's destinations in Sugar House that are really big destination locations, and it's surrounded by people who could very easily walk or bike there. And there are definitely streets in Sugar House that facilitate that kind of movement, but I will be focusing on 1300 East, which is a street that does not facilitate that kind of movement. Basically, if you live on the south side of I-80, it's pretty dangerous and hard to get there. And even if you are able to walk to the Sugar House, like shopping center area, after crossing multiple exit freeways and entrances, you are basically, you yourself trying to just like walk through a parking lot. There's no like crosswalk or pedestrian pathway to get you there. So I am just trying to, I'm still in the conceptual phase of, like, what do I focus on? Do I focus on the intersections, the bridge itself, the wall on the bridge is like 3 feet high? Do I focus on the parking lot, or do I kind of look at it as a whole picture and make recommendations? And I like the idea of a whole picture because it seems like a more well-rounded project. And in general, I live on the south side and I have to walk through the intersections, the bridge and the parking lot. Yeah, so that's as far as I've really got. It's really hard to find examples of good parking lots. Walkable, it's hard to find examples of walkable parking lots, which is definitely not something that you see very often, but it's still, I mean, a parking lot is basically for cars and pedestrians. Like, you park your car and you're a pedestrian. So if anyone sees or knows of a parking lot that has kind of good pedestrian infrastructure, I would love to hear about it because I've had a hard time finding. Yeah.
I have an example.
Okay.
It was in the New York Times, just in the last week. I'll find it for you if you, and if I forget, please remind me. It's an idea that, that actually, I saw hatched in Portland in the early 1990s. There was a debate about a policy, a statewide policy, and then became just city policy because the state chickened out. But it was a policy that required new commercial buildings or significant renovations to existing commercial buildings that required the building footprint to be up at the sidewalk, up at the street instead of behind parking lots, because this very fact of parking lots in between the building and the sidewalk at the street, those parking lots are barriers. And it basically says, if you didn't get to this store in a car, we don't want you. You're not welcome. You're not the same as people who drive cars. And so this, it's an urban design oriented rule that required new construction and significant renovations to be up at the street. Well, Safeway and Albertsons and Walmart and Kmart, they still existed back then. And just about every major retail source came unglued about this. We saw it, Sugar House actually has some examples of this. The Barnes and Noble at the corner of Highland and 21st South is the result of a policy intervention with the Boyer Company to make that happen. Tried to do that again with the Smith's renovations on 900 East, and didn't work. But the policy response was okay, or it was kind of a compromise. If you can't bring the box to the street, and you bring the street to the box. And so the idea was to integrate street-like drive lanes. Every parking lot has, drive lanes. And there's nothing that says that they can't be built to local street standards. And so the city of Portland adopted this requirement that if you were a big box retailer of a certain size and you are not at the street, you have to build your drive lanes, even though that they're privately owned, they are not public streets, but they have to be built to public street standards. So they have to have curbs and gutters, and they have to have on-street parking, which is an interesting thing to have in a drive lane that's going through a parking lot. They have on-street parking, but they have to have on-street parking, and they have to have street trees, and they have to have sidewalks. They have to connect to the grid off the site. And so they look like, from a user's perspective, you don't know that they are drive lanes in a parking lot. You think they're extensions of the local road network. So there are some examples from Portland, but there's also an example from a mall project. Again, it was in the New York Times. And so this is a thing. And I think that maybe is an idea for your group. I think I would start with these dystopic images. Because you say, oh, it's about Sugar House walkability. And the first slide is that. And it's just like, oh yeah, Sugar House. I love walking around Sugar House. and it's like, I think you should exploit people's expectations by bursting them, by saying, Sugar House walkability. Yeah, this is Sugar House too. The corner, I know that area you talk about very well because my in-laws live down there. And the corner of 13th East and 27th South has got the worst transit stop in the whole UTA system. I have stood at that corner waiting for the 220 and been splashed on and almost hit. It's that whole stretch from there to Red Lobster is just hideous. And so I would start with that. You want to capture in those images, just, yeah, this is the other Sugar House. This is the, the kind of rat maze Sugar House. That would be my suggestion. Other ideas? What do you see in these images?
bridge is slated to get replaced fairly soon.
I know, and that's another consideration of like, it is an ongoing project. And with the bridge replacement, I'm sure they'll have better pedestrian crosswalks, but with Julia, at what point should I still make recommendations that could like bolster their project and like add on? But yeah, I mean, it's construction is going on right now.
There's opportunities to kind of wedge into those projects, even under projects that are underway. And sometimes you just influencing at the margins because they've done a lot of the design work, but there's still a chance. And both of those facilities are UDOT project or UDOT facilities. I've included the freeway, but 13th East is as well. So, would Andrea Olson come here if you want to get her here? Sure. Okay. So, Alex, are you on Zoom? Great. So Alex, talk to us about your slides.
Okay, I think people, there we go. Yeah, so mine's still a little bit text heavy right now, just because there's a lot of content to this subject, but might move it more into the speaker notes. Basically here, that's like a visual map representation of the locations of all those service facilities now in their modern kind of dispersed form. The text just kind of describes a little bit of the historical, like what led up to that dispersed form, along with the next slide being more of just a quick visual documentation of what the old and the new facilities look like now.
The history, I'm sorry, keeps flipping around on this. I'll put it up there. Okay. I think that these are powerful images right here. I agree. You don't want to have a lot of text in your slides because slides are for someone to present, right? And that's what their job is to provide that information verbally. And so I think if there is a way to, I know this is where PowerPoint is so frustrating because so often the information, the images are presented in vertical format, what we would call portrait format, and the slides are in landscape. And so how do you get an image like this to really pop? When you can change and put north to the left is about the only thing I can think of. Greg?
So yeah, I agree. I think that you could put a lot of this text in the speaker notes because that's what you'll be saying. And then doing bullet points with the map. I think it would be visually impactful if you did travel time between each one of the centers.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And not only travel by vehicle, but also perhaps by walking and showing how dispersed it is to folks who don't have immediate access to automobiles.
Yeah, I think walking travel times would be great because the point is that there isn't transit options in most of these locations. And so, yeah, I mean, having drive times is tragically ironic, kind of poignant because you're talking about a population that by and large is vehicleless. So walking times I think would be great.
Yeah, so that just kind of highlights the main points and then probably just gonna make that brief with bullet points, maybe some photos. I can bring some more photos, just personalize it a little bit. The next one I guess you could say is like more of a kind of provides, I don't know how you would say it, like it kind of suggests sort of the weight of this issue. Like it's not a slap on the wrist to take tracks without paying for it. A lot of people think it's like maybe it's a little fine or somebody has to like get off the train, but some of our clients, like one person had to be in prison for or jail for 6 months because they took the tracks train without paying. So those like third-degree felony theft charges can compound on one another, which just kind of, to me, it just emphasizes like the criminalization of homelessness and how that's not like, it's kind of a big issue.
I think this is, when I saw this slide, I couldn't believe it. This is really, really well done. I mean, it's well done because it just makes me so angry. It's what an outrage. And I think this is really, in terms of explaining why this is important, that your idea, your concern is important. This slide just kind of speaks volumes. This is well done. And local research precedent, I think is good. I would maybe save that though. I think what you want to do, and we'll talk about this before we end tonight. Kind of the next step is, okay, you've identified the issue, you've explained why it's important. And then the next step is to talk about what are the options, what are the alternatives. And this is kind of this slide here, and I appreciate that you're citing to sources that are associated with the research consortium that I helped to run. It's now closing down, but and that's nice. But you want to keep that for the end. You want to say, oh, and by the way, there's some smart thinkers out there that also agree with our ideas. I would put, maybe right after. I like the order up to this point, and then I think you want to start talking about your solutions.
Okay.
And maybe, citing to an existing study, I would just, you don't need that. Just go into your solutions right after that. Yeah. In fact, I think this is a particularly effective slide. That would be good.
Okay.
Other comments and reactions?
Yeah, I mean, I just think you could reduce the text with a presentation.
Yeah.
And if you have like an accompanying pamphlet or a leave behind, that if you give this presentation, you can you can create a leave behind with this information. But as a presentation, I think the bullet points are sufficient.
So Gray, you just kind of exposed yourself there. Gray is a professional communications person. He's, when you use the word leave behind, as a noun, a leave behind, that indicated that you're a professional communicator. That's good. I love that. People on Zoom, we want to hear from you. I mean, we've been hearing from Alex, but other people on Zoom too.
Back to the first slide.
Yeah. This one or the one with the map?
The first one, the title.
Slide.
And it seems focused on transit when there's lots of other ways to get to homeless shelters, particularly bicycles, which people use, and the 33rd South corridor is incredibly bad for, homeless people have been killed walking across the street like a year or so ago. It's incredibly bad access for everything to get to the 33rd South shelter.
Well, yeah, and I think this is a good example of, a lot of the stuff that we do when we come up with project ideas they're not solving all the problems. They are, here is this bigger problem, and here's a partial solution. And so maybe that's something that Alex, this is, or all of us can do this in our own ways, but maybe here Alex can also acknowledge that there are other transportation challenges.
Or changing it, instead of transportation, transit opportunities.
Okay. Either way, but you're right. It's probably, when you're trying to think strategically, you want to try to take on solving all the problems in one fell swoop. It's as satisfying as that would be if you could pull it off. That your likelihood of being able to do anything is reduced by the increased complexity. So,
I think, so I guess my comment to that is like, we definitely have complaints about the transportation infrastructure. But what I see like most often is people really want a UTA pass. And I mean, if the like shuttle service can drop off and pick up right in front of the HRC, like in the 33rd South situation, yeah, someone in a wheelchair would definitely benefit from more infrastructure, but it might be easier just to get them on a shuttle right outside the door and take them right to a major transit hub so they could maybe avoid some of that, because those places aren't always located in a very walkable area.
yeah, it's kind of why they got located in those areas. If they were walkable areas, they'd probably be too popular and politically difficult to cite a homeless resource center there. That's an irony, isn't it? That, you know, the places where it's politically possible to cite a homeless resource center are those places that are not walkable. And maybe that's a point to make. I think that at some point in your presentation, Alex, you might want to just point that out. You know, these places tend to be unwalkable places, and that's why they got chosen. You know, it wasn't because that they were unwalkable, but it happens to go along with the lack of popularity, the lack of comparative concern, political concern, which made it possible to cite them in location. I don't know. It's quandary. Yeah.
One of the proposed sites was on the S line in Sugar House and got so much backlash from Sugar House residents that they didn't go through with it. And like the men's resource center is like on the Jordan River because the county owned land out there, and it was in South Salt Lake, which has a really with the boys. It's a low income city. And so I think talking about like, okay, these shelters were not actually located based on transportation access. You know, they're located, like you're saying, like based on like where are we going to get the least pushback? So
yeah.
So now I think posing it as like, well, okay, well now what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, you have to retrofit the transportation system, and it's not just as Dave points out, it's not just the transit. You know, it's all forms of transportation that need to be retrofitted into these places.
One more thing.
Yeah, Terry.
I really like that last paragraph on this issue page. Like, I love it to see that just blown up. That's the issue, right? The crux of it.
This right here. Yeah.
So that's the rest of it's history and really valuable, but I think you could catch people's attention, like saying this is the main part of our issue.
Yeah. Great. Excellent.
And then I would also, with the solution, I mean, that photograph of the pass, the tracks pass, I would just almost put, you know, a one month, I mean, to get rid of all the text and just, you know, a 1 month pass, because it sounded like, Alex, that is what your goal is. And after listening to Julianne's speech, it was kind of, you know, be very clear, like, what is it you want? What is it you would want for the homeless?
Good. All right.
Who was the presenter 2 weeks ago?
On safety,
From UTA.
oh, GJ Levanti.
He mentioned that he thought that those passes should just be handed out like candy. Because by trying to control them too much, what he said, you're picking up pennies and leaving dollars lying around, something like that. Is how he put it. And that would be a good, if you can read just what he said, that would be a good phrase to put on that presentation.
$700 to pick up lines.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Good, thank you. So, let's see, why is this opening? Guess is that,
It looks like you can run off of that.
oh, we can just run it.
Yeah, it might just work as a slideshow.
Okay, oh yeah, there we go. So Matt, talk to us about this.
Yeah, so Parviz and I, we are looking at the intersection of State Street and 300 South. It's the intersection of a major UDOT arterial road as well as one of the city's few protected bike lanes. And, you go from, it transitions to, completely unprotected once you reach the intersection to the point where you're gonna cross 7 lanes, including a turn lane with, just so much vulnerability. And Parviz made a great video too, to kind of, hopefully we can watch it, that really kind of drives it home.
Oh, that's not that. Let's see.
You need to download it because it's just like a quick preview.
Okay. We can get to that. Oh, I see. Here. Yeah, there we go.
But in addition to that too, there's so much change happening in that area. There's so many, businesses, food options, residential housing being built, right in that general area of downtown that it's going to call for a lot of better mobility options that are not served
There you go.
current situation here.
So this is the video?
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta be in slide presentation mode. Right?
Oh, there we go. No, look at it again.
So, we'll take it on faith that it's a good,
Okay, yeah.
a good video. So describe it to us, please.
Me and Matt just went down to State Street and we looked at a few corridors. We talked about how there's a lot of pedestrian infrastructure, especially coming from the Gallivan Center to the new pedestrian walkway that connects Edison Street. And I believe it's Floral Street or the Floral Building. You have a lot of people walking through there. You have a lot of people trying to bike and possibly turn onto State Street. There's bars down that direction. There's new residential high rises. There's grocery stores on 100 South Harmon's up there. So we're predicting that a lot more people are going to be walking. And we were there for an hour and we were just constantly seeing people almost hit by cars, people not stopping for pedestrians at left-hand turns, people biking either on the sidewalks or on State Street. And it was just a mess. Me and Matt almost got hit walking across the pedestrian crosswalk towards the Gallivan Center to the new pedestrian walkway. And then we also examined the bike intersection lane on 200 West and 300 South, which is only 3 blocks away from there. So it's definitely applicable in this situation, and it kind of buffers out the corners of the intersection to a little bit more to walk. There was a median hideout for pedestrians, so people that were walking could walk a little bit slower if they wanted to cross the intersection. And also we got caught in the middle of the intersection one time and it felt pretty safe. People were driving a lot slower because there was a lot more people walking around. So we just kind of compared those two things and we saw a lot of problems in seriously 40 minutes of being there.
So so let's just walk through the slides. So you start, this is a good, effective, I think, opening slide. And then again, we'll take it on your word on the video. I think that can be really powerful. I think that you don't want to have it go too long, but I think, that well edited, showing just, how crazy it is. I think approaching State Street from the east, from that, well-designed, at least in my opinion, well-designed protected bike lane, and it's just, you know, it's an attractive nuisance in a way. It's attracting all this traffic. All these people are attracted to that facility. It's like, welcome bicyclists. Here we provided this nice, safe facility for you. And haha, here we are at State Street. It was all a joke. And now you're on your own. Good luck. I mean, it really is cruel. It's like, what did you expect people to do? You know, and all their bike trips are going to stop at the Broadway Theater. You know, you're going to go to a movie and then head back to your East Bench home. It's really outrageous. And I think that just seeing that, being able to visualize that extreme change of condition and to suggest this is dangerous. And then if you have data, I don't know if you have crash data, but if you have data to back up how dangerous it is, and if not right at that intersection, you know, in those environs, you know, any of the kind of South Temple, First South, Second South, Third South, Fourth South intersections with State Street, any of those intersections, you get some crash data on that. I think to back up how dangerous it seems from that video. And then my suggestion is before you get to text like this, get a map that shows all the new development that's happening on the east side of State Street. Because the commercial attractions of downtown are on the west side of State Street. State Street's kind of that dividing line from kind of east-west. And so if you're living in one of those new apartments that are being built along State Street and along 2nd East, 3rd East, you're headed that direction. You're headed across that intersection. And I think what you can infer from just seeing a map is that whatever dangers we've seen already, they are about to get worse because you're going to have more people making that trip, crossing that intersection. And you should expect, as bad as it's been with the crash data that you show, it's going to get, the crash data are going to be worse. And you're going to have more bodies out there. And I know that seems a little extreme, but I think that's how you have to sell this. You can't be continuing on with a design standard that was created at a time when there were just surface parking lots on both sides of State Street. It's not the case anymore. So I think that might be a good thing. I think this image here is good. If you can get a little higher resolution, so it's not so fuzzy, that would be great. I realize, you know, you use what you got, right? But you know, just showing how far that is. You might just 100 feet. What's 100 feet? That's a third of a football field. Figure out something that's 100 feet and put it here. You know, overlay it so people can say, oh, that's a frame of reference. You know, so we're talking about not just a number, we're talking about something that people can understand kind of intuitively.
Or how long it would take for a physically disabled person to walk across.
Oh, there we go. Right. Not just a physically disabled person, a slow moving person. Slow moving person. You know, my mother-in-law, who called during the earlier presentation because she's fallen. She's in her mid-80s, and she's doing all right. But you know, walking is a very slow process for her, and you know, so many of us are moving in that direction because you know the great tsunami. We're all going to be, you know, easy walking. Transportation ability very soon. So this is all very good. Dave, yeah.
Well, on that history and context slide, back up. One is that Highway 89, where they're talking about that's not Highway 89. Highway 89 is State Street and then goes down 4th South and then to 3rd West. So that section on Highway 89. The second part is that that area is also part of the central traffic district, which means that bikes are not allowed on the sidewalk. And so that adds ammunition to making it safer because the city says it's illegal to ride on the sidewalk and they want you to ride on the road. And it's terrifying either way.
Definitely got several videos of people on the sidewalk.
So you have a way to watch the video, if we still have time, if not, then.
No, I see that. We are getting at time here, so I anticipated we were going to get to everybody, and I apologize for that. But we will. Let's do one more here. The park connections, because we've got some folks here from. We need to stop sharing and start sharing again. There we go. Kristen, you want to talk about this?
So we're looking at middle safety. Mainly because parks are supposed to be a place where everyone in the community can go to relax, more than fun. But kind of feel like it's really important and popular parks in Salt Lake are bordered by really intense arterial streets that make it really frightening and impossible for some to even get to the park in person. Hoping to create safer intersections for pedestrians and bicyclists and drivers, because drivers don't want to hit anybody. So just making everybody safer at these intersections so people actually feel safe getting to the parks.
Absolutely. I think this is a good. I mean, I like your title slide, but then I think this is a good one to emphasize. These are facilities that are designed to attract children and older people. That's what parks are designed to do. A well-designed park. How do you define success with a park? It has lots of children there. How are the children getting there? Yeah, how do you expect them to get there? You expect them to be chaperoned and chauffeured by people in driving minivans, or do you expect them to actually get there on their own, or with other kids, or with adults walking? I mean, that's the thing is that these are accidental points of attraction. They're intended to attract this crowd that are particularly vulnerable to, and I love this as your next slide, is the contrast. The three parks that you have highlighted here further down in the slides, Liberty and Sugar House and Pioneer are all, they are all signature parks. They're all historic parks. They all go back in some cases a couple hundred, 150 years. In the case of Pioneer Park, and they are all bordered by major high-speed, high-volume traffic facilities, and I think all of them UDOT facilities. Interesting, and I think this has got to be. We've got a Safe Routes to Schools program. We need to have a Safe Routes to Parks program as well. Great. Well, as I mentioned, there's an issue going on in my family I need to go attend to. And so I'm going to close down the class for tonight. But I like what I'm seeing with these slides. I'll send some other additional comments to the other slides that we didn't get to. And I apologize, we couldn't get to all of them. But that's kind of, I guess, the nature of working in so many different projects. What I'd like to ask you to do is between now and 2 weeks from now, because we're not meeting next week, as I said, please, if you're working, well, you all are in groups, whether you're working on a group project or you're working on an individual project within a group context. Please get in touch with your group members and kind of review what you've worked on so far and get, do this kind of peer-to-peer sharing like we were just doing, and comments and suggestions from your fellow group members, and how to make these opening slides, these expository slides better and more, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, more impactful. They have a higher degree of communication of what the idea is, but immediately after you identify what the idea is, why is it important? Why should anyone care? You want to get that across just as quickly as possible. And then what you want to start working on, and some of you have already, but now it's time to work on it. Yes, a little more focused, is what are the solutions? So you go from, okay, here's the issue, here's the problem. Here are the options for solving the problem. You want to move right to that. You don't want to beat the kind of the negative parts of what needs to be solved too long. You want to move right to from this is really bad, and there is a solution. There is a response. That I think the best presentations show that there's more than one possible response. One of the things you want to convey in your presentations is that you are well considered, that you're not just flying off on, the kind of the idea du jour, the kind of the new sexy idea that everyone's doing, and you're just saying, do this. You want to say, well, here are the possible ways you could address this problem. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. We'll talk about next how you present. Obviously, you know which one you want to promote, right? You know which one's the best one. But we want to, at least initially, present a kind of an even-handed, okay, here is the problem. Here, there are a variety of ways that you can solve this. Why did we go down? Oh, my computer went to sleep. And here are the various ways that we can address this problem. And then we'll talk next about how you present the, what we can call the locally preferred solution. What is the best way to solve it? But that's later. Okay. All right. So see everyone in 2 weeks, and I'll be, of course, sending you lots of email traffic because that's my tendency. That's what I do. But between now and then, for those of you that are taking a spring break, have an excellent spring break. And for those that are just kind of living your lives, have excellent lives. And we'll meet up again in 2 weeks. See you then. I can't wait. Thank you. Bye.